Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harris Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale here, and yes, we're still kind of depressed. A week later, we did that special episode last Thursday, and it stunk because we were talking about another loss, disappointing loss in March, Shane, and then unfortunately, as you know, the last week has played out. I guess there are sadder things than just the games on the field.
Yeah, and I know we'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, big picture, it's look, we said it last week. The NCAA tournament, it is the most unforgiving format in all of postseason sports in any level, any country. I would say it is very unforgiving, and big picture, it's I mean, I hate to say, hey, we had a great season because we've been there, done that, but moving on, and things are happening, and already got some transfer news. I'm sure we'll have some more the next time we talk. But with our luck, we'll have more as soon as we're done recording this. But we always have like I always said, we always have plenty to talk about, and we have no shortage of things to talk about. We always wonder, now football season's over, basketball season's over. What are we going to talk about? We have never in 200 plus episodes had that problem, have we?
No, we've not. And I guess that's a good thing. We'll find out this summer if we'll be tested because there's no realignment going on. And
something will pop up.
Something
Always.
will pop up, but it'll be a busy next month with the transfer portal open in college basketball, and we'll get right to that. There will be no Shane standouts this week, so let's get right into Buy or Sell, which is presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off. Even you Clemson haters, or no, even you Clemson fans, should I say. And haters.
Did they infiltrate our?
Our YouTube page was ridiculous. I mean, our team was the great. All right, listen. Let me just say this right off the bat. Yes, Clemson, you won. Congratulations. Arizona lost by 5 and shot 5 of 28 from 3-point range. That's all I need to say.
And then lost to Bama, just like in football. And
no,
a team that Arizona beat.
I'm not trying to troll. They beat us, Shane. They flat out beat us.
I know.
But Arizona shot 5 of 28 and only lost by 5. They lost by 15. I'm like, all right, that was a Clemson. That was a dominating performance. Congrats on the win. Enough with the trolling. You got the win. You're an Elite Eight team.
That's fine. And troll all they want. They had their moment in the sun in basketball, got the Elite Eight, and we'll see them again in a decade or two, maybe.
So if you're a Clemson fan and still are mad that I just said that, but want to purchase an ice shaker, by all means. And when you do that, check out the post-purchase survey and mention Wildcat Country. You can say that we're jerks. That's fine. But just mention that you heard it on Wildcat Country. And Shane and I get the credit either way. So, hey, We'll take it. All right, number one in buy or sell. Shane, we're a week later, and I'm finally past another brutal tournament loss. Buy or sell?
I feel like I was past it by the next morning because I sort of, I joke about it, how we sort of expected, but I kind of did. I try to retrain myself to say, anything that happens beyond the Sweet 16 is a bonus, and being a fan of all the Phoenix pro sports teams as well, it's kind of that way. We make the playoffs, it's a win. Anything beyond that is a bonus in any sport. So, yeah, I mean, we have this albatross hanging around our neck as Arizona fans, for 23 years and counting. You would figure with all the great teams, Tommy Lloyd's had 3 great teams in his many seasons. Sean Miller had some very good teams. Lute Olson toward the end of his tenure. You think over those last 23 years, by dumb luck, Arizona would have found a way to win 4 games in a row in that damn tournament, and it just hasn't happened. And meanwhile, a lot of other teams that aren't known for college basketball are in the Final Four or have gotten the Final Four. I mean, obviously this year NC State, which needed a missed free throw late just to get in the tournament, is gotten to where Arizona hasn't been since 2001. So it's tough because it's the criticism I think is fair, but it is a very unforgiving tournament. And yeah, it's important to, like, I think we're allowed to savor the wins. Winning at Duke is a special memory. We love beating Duke every single time it's happened over the last couple, and hopefully we'll get to do it again next season. We got to see Arizona beat Alabama in person. It was a fun game up in Phoenix. They blew out Wisconsin. They beat UCLA twice. They beat ASU twice. So a lot to celebrate. I'm not saying, hey, it was a great season. Don't think about the negative, because it is all about the Final Four national championships at the end of the day, and Arizona came up short. But again, going back to the idea that we've been down this road a lot of times. It's just another year, and I will say I am confident as long as Tommy Lloyd is there, we'll keep getting the opportunities, and eventually, maybe by dumb luck, Arizona will finally win 4 games in a row at some point.
By the way, last night I happened to be walking around the Arizona Biltmore with a friend, and I ran into I didn't say anything. Somebody that I have met multiple times before. I believe you've spoken to him a few times. He's in town for a special occasion. He has a strong Arizona connection. Once again, I've met him several times in person. I believe you have as well. And I noticed that his Southern accent seemed to be much stronger than I last remembered. Any guesses as to who I saw in person?
You're talking about Rich Rodriguez?
It was close. No, I saw him last year.
No, I know
Byrne.
that, but the Southern accent thing threw me off a little bit.
Greg Byrne, the AD at
Oh,
Alabama,
yeah.
walked right by me.
Okay.
Was talking
No,
to
I'm
two
sure.
other guys.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's back in town and talking to
Yeah,
up at ASU because of course, his Crimson Tide get to the Final Four.
how do you feel about that? How do you feel about
Well,
Greg Byrne?
Greg Byrne did great things at Arizona for the most part.
Yeah.
But I am a little bitter that he keeps enjoying success at not always either at Arizona's expense or just like, him being back here for the Final Four, going to Alabama and getting to the Final Four while he never did that in Arizona is a bit infuriating. But I try not to dwell on it too much. Of course, he is an ASU alum. So we have to keep that in mind as well. But he did some good things at Arizona, and obviously he's doing some good things at Alabama, and we'll see how the Kalen DeBoer thing works out for him. But yeah, no, I did get a chance to talk with him. He actually visited the studio at 15, and we
He came to AZTV when I worked there. Yeah,
he promoted the it was the Cactus Kickoff, the
yeah.
year of the ill-fated 2016 season. Had a good chat and was always generous with his time. So, and he did social media the right way, and
Great salesman. Fantastic.
absolutely, yeah,
Fantastic.
right up there with the former Arizona football coach.
With that said, his team's in the Final Four and Arizona's not. I am extremely bitter. I am not over it. I'm going to sell that. You might have gotten it over it in a day. I have not.
No, it still sucks. It's just there's no point in dwelling about it. It's just not.
No, it's I'm going to dwell on it because it sucks, and I'm not happy, and I'm not going to be happy. Yeah, and I think that there are a lot of people out there who are probably going to say, if you're over it like Shane, let us know. And if you aren't like me, also let us. I'm kind of curious, actually. Maybe you put out a poll, Shane, if people are over it or not. I'm not. I'm glad that you are, but this one's going to sting for a long time. Just going to put it that way. I didn't tease our guest coming up on the show. We're kind of all over the place today, but what the heck? Matt Moreno, the professor, going to join us. We're going to ask him about everything in terms of roster movement for Arizona, what's next and recruiting and all that. But let's get to number 2 of buy or sell. Maybe he'll be able to chime in on some of this. I will be happy if these players return for the basketball team. I got 4 of them that I want to ask you about. Buy if you're happy, sell if you're not. Henry Vesar.
I'll buy that. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I guess here's the thing. It depends on, could Arizona get a great transfer if he moves on and doesn't take up that roster spot? I mean, I think I would still like to see what he could do with Arizona. So yes, I would like to see him return.
All right, I'm going to say I would sell. I saw enough last year, and then he sat out all this year. I think it's time for a fresh start. So sell, move on. Mo Krivas, buy or sell?
Buy. Yeah, I think Arizona, Tommy Lloyd and his staff have done a really good job of developing big men. And I think that Krivas showed some potential in his first year. He's got to be a little more assertive. He put on a little more muscle, but he has time to do all that in the offseason. I would like to see him back, yes.
I would like to see him back as well. I would like to see him actually dunk when you're 7'3".
Yeah.
But throw it down. I mean, all the layups, I actually think I remember seeing 2 dunks all year from Krivas. Talented player. I think he's way better than Vesar from what I saw, as both of them as freshmen. I mean, way different. So Krivas, I'd like to come back. How about Umar Ballo? Buy or sell?
Have you heard anything about? Is it possible? I know he has the option to come back, but how realistic is that?
I'd say probably I wouldn't say it's out of the question, but I wouldn't say that it's going to happen. But how would you feel about it? Would you be happy if he came back or not?
Yeah, because I guess I'm picking everyone here, but it's like, good big men don't grow on trees, and I know he's got his free throw issues, but he's still a very above average center in college basketball, and I think he could contribute a lot next season. Yeah.
I'm buying Ballo as well. Once again, don't think he comes back, but he could, maybe show the young guys a few more things. And I don't know how much better you're going to get in the transfer portal than Ballo. So that's why I would like to see him come back. All right. Finally, how about Kylan Boswell? Now, the rumor is today that Kylan Boswell is transferring. I've heard that from one source, and then another source said, well, unconfirmed.
And to be clear, your source isn't the random dude on X who posted about it, who's got like
No,
500 followers. You
no,
actually
I'm
have more reliable people than
yeah,
that.
they're people that I trust more than that random person that's posting that on online. With that said, I think he's going to go. So buy if you're happy that or want him to be back, or if you're okay with him moving on.
I buy on all of them, I guess, because I would, I'd like to see him come back. I think that, I guess the question is, would he? I know he and Jade Bradley saw the floor at the same time quite a bit last season, but I can't imagine they would both start because they both play the same position. And I think if you ask most, here would be a poll. You ask most Arizona fans, who would you rather have if come back if you could pick one, Jaden Bradley or Kylan Boswell? It'd probably be at least 80-20 Bradley at this point.
Like 90-10.
At least 80-20. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would like to see him come back if he accepts the role that he's going to be given, and I don't know if he will. I think it's my guess, even without your reports, my guess is that he probably would explore transferring and do that, so he'd have a place where he could definitely be a starter and he could take that guesswork out of it. But yeah, I would like to see him come back because I think he could be a very good contributor, and I think he's only going to get better. He's still only 19 years old, despite his very inconsistent play last season. But I'm going to guess that's not going to happen.
I think it's time to move on. I listen. I thought Kylan would be a star this year, and he wasn't. And I think part of the problem was the off the court. There were some issues, and we don't want to dive that much into it. I don't think it's any of our business. But the rumors were out there, and I think it's time to move on. And so, therefore, I think it'd be best for both sides if Boswell moved on. And a guy like Jordan Pope from Oregon State, who lit up Arizona in the regular season, hit that
Take
amazing
that
game-winning shot.
Yeah.
Take that guy in a heartbeat. Now, Miles Rice from Washington State, I'd expect him to end up with his former coach Kyle Smith at Stanford, so I wouldn't expect him to come here. But I think Pope is a guy that certainly would make a lot of sense for Arizona. If Boswell left and we got in Pope, I would be thrilled. I think that'd be a great move. Yep. We did see Morauskas and Borovichinen that are gone. Outside of Boswell, who, if you were to make a prediction on another player that would leave, I think Boswell and Vesar would probably be the two leading candidates. Anyone else that stands out to you that you would be concerned would be gone?
I don't know of anyone else is slated to come back next season with transfer. I mean, except maybe Anderson, just because Dylan Anderson he redshirted it, and I think he intends to play for Arizona next season. But with all the great incoming freshmen they have and transfers, I don't know how likely it is he's going to see the court. So I wonder if he might explore other options. But other than that, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have the sources, but I don't envision anyone else slated to return next year bolting at this point.
I think you're going to lose. I think 4 players will be gone. It would be my guess. We've already seen 2. I would say Boswell will be 3, and I think Vesar will be 4. If I'm Vesar, I just don't know that there's room for you. I don't know that you're ever going to play and develop. I'd rather go somewhere.
Maybe
go to the WCC and you can play. Go to Washington State. All their players are transferring. Plenty of room over there. Go play and do something.
I was disappointed that Morauskas left. I think
I did too.
Could be a solid, sharpshooter, just a guy who just hits some threes off the bench if nothing else. And I understand him wanting to go and maybe worrying about getting lost in the shuffle again next season. But I was actually excited for him to come back. I was disappointed. Borovichinen, it's okay. But Morauskas, I wanted to see what he could have done next year.
Yeah, I would have too, but there obviously was a reason he didn't play. I mean, the guy can really shoot. When he got in the game, the guy could light it up, but he just didn't play for a reason. Number 3, let's kind of pivot to baseball. Nice sweep over to UCLA, 3 walk-off wins, and they are now in the postseason field in one of the early prognostications.
Last 4 in, yeah, Baseball America, last 4 in, yep.
So Shane, if Arizona baseball makes the postseason, Chip Hale has to get another season at the helm, right?
I didn't say he has to, but I would probably do it. I think if you can show at least the team's going in the right direction. Look, Arizona, they're toward the top of the conference right now. I mean, they had to get 3 walk-offs, but they did it against UCLA, and then they followed it up with a win over New Mexico. They're toward the top of the Pac-12 right now. They are second in the conference in ERA, which I don't think any of us expected going into the season, behind Oregon State, which is always a very good baseball team. ASU is last in ERA, by the way, in the conference.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think, look, Arizona baseball is kind of strange because they have if you just look at the stats, they have one of the richest histories in college baseball. They became one of 10 teams earlier this season to win, I forget how many games ever. But they are one of the best in terms of College World Series appearances and College World Series championships. They're up there. They've won 4. They almost won a 5th in Jay Johnson's first year. but they're not regarded that way. It's kind of almost like the opposite of men's basketball, like where men's basketball hasn't been to the Final Four at a national championship in a long time, but they're regarded as one of the top programs in the country. Baseball's maybe kind of the opposite. But I think the minimum expectation every year should be at least to get in that field of 64. There's no reason that shouldn't be the minimum expectation every year. And if Chip Hale can at least get there this year, then I think he deserves another year. I mean, the pitching's finally coming around. If they fade late, then I think maybe it's time to move on. I mean, I really hope the Chip Hale experiment works, and maybe it still could, but this team really should have a better record at this point. I want to see them continue to improve. I don't know if just getting in is enough, getting into that field. But if you do that and you say, hey, look, we're making progress, especially on the pitching side of things, then maybe he deserves another season and you have the chance to play it out. And look, we used to give coaches 4 or 5 years, and now we're less patient. And so maybe he does deserve a 4th season. At this point, I would lean yes, but I think there's a lot more work to do.
All right. I'm going to say yes, absolutely. You make the tournament? Okay, I'll shut up. You don't? Yeah. Okay, it's time for a change. Real simple. You're
an ultimatum guy.
Yeah, I am, and you were able to interview Chip. I unfortunately was unable to do that interview that day a couple of years ago, and great guy. No doubt the interview was great. With that said, the results are not, and we're used to Jay Johnson coming in here and winning. I mean, Jay Johnson got to Omaha twice. Chip Hale's not even come close.
I think Arizona baseball should be the kind of program they make the postseason at least 8 or 9 out of every 10 years.
Yeah,
once every 6-7 years, they get to the College World Series.
Correct.
That's where they should be. And if Chip Hale can get him there, great. I'm not convinced he can. I hope he can because I like him and I hope it works out. But I think the team is headed in the right direction for the most part, but it needs to continue to go that way.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right. Last one in buy or sell. So we saw that Dr. Robbins announced that he's stepping down, and this was like a whole issue. And I'm thinking, why are we talking about this? Why is everybody going nuts? He said he's stepping down in 2026, if not sooner, depending on when the Board of Regents finds a replacement. This doesn't really affect athletics, so we shouldn't care that all that much. Buy or sell?
I'll sell that it doesn't affect athletics because a school president caring about athletics can make a big difference. Absolutely. Now, with that said, it's kind of a mixed bag as far as what Arizona athletics has looked like under Dr. Robbins' leadership. Obviously, the budget deficit is one thing, and I really don't know, is that on him? Is it on Dave Hickey? Is it a combination thereof? I really don't know, but he is invested in sports. He's big. I think that's worth something. I still remember when Sean Miller was at Arizona before the whole thing with Book came out, and Ohio State there was rumors Ohio State was interested in Sean Miller, and Robbins said, they could have him over my dead body. I kind of like that in a university president. I don't like one who maybe is a little too involved, and I think that's, you can't be that involved and say you didn't know anything about the budget shortfall. So I don't know exactly where that lies, but I would prefer a school president who does care about athletics. I think that can make a difference in some aspects, but maybe one who isn't quite as involved as Dr. Robbins. So it's kind of pros and cons to it. I don't know how much it's going to impact athletics in the short term, especially with a new athletic director already in place, and you have a new football coach, a men's basketball coach for the foreseeable future. But there'll be some ripple effect at some point. Will it be a positive or a negative? I don't know. I have, like a lot of people, I think I have mixed feelings about Dr. Robbins' tenure at Arizona from an athletics perspective.
All right, from an athletics perspective, for me, yeah, he's been probably too involved for what a school president should be. But then again, we don't want Ann Weaver Hart either, who didn't care one bit. So you have a great a new athletic director. We'll see if she's great. DRF, Desiree Reed-Francois, and she seems to be has the resume. And seemingly that aura about her where I think she's going to be successful. So whoever comes in, I think she's going to be able to take care of business with athletics. With that said, you also want a school president, as you said, that supports him. Dr. Robbins really did. You saw him everywhere at all the sporting events. Mm-hmm. I would like to see another school president who's going to travel with the basketball team to the NCAA tournament and the football team to the bowl game. And if we don't have one of those, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's a must, but I think it's a plus as long as he doesn't have his finger in everything. But Dr. Robbins seemed to do that. Look, and I still think he was the guy who probably was the ultimate decider on the Jed Fish hire. That worked out pretty well, but it didn't
Yeah.
also help in keeping him. I still remember seeing him on the sideline for the was it the Utah game we were at? You know, he was there talking with Jed the whole time, and Jed still left. So it doesn't necessarily mean everything, but I again, all things being equal, I would like a school president who does show up at athletic events from time to time and really does enjoy him or herself is on top of it.
That will be another storyline over the next, I would say they probably figured this out in a year. I mean, it should not take them more than a year to find a new president. I would think so. So I don't think Robbins makes it until 2026, but we'll see how that plays out. All right. Wildcat Country is presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Remember that Harrah's Auction Casino is the only Valley casino with Caesars Rewards, player's card that pays for Vegas and more. In fact, the reward credits you earn with Caesars Rewards can be redeemed for hotel stays, dining, and more at 50 destinations across the country, including Las Vegas, Lake Tahoe, New Orleans, and dozens of others. Sign up, play, and earn Caesars Rewards only at Harrah's Auction Casino in Maricopa. One card, 50 destinations to enjoy your perks. Now, speaking of Harrah's Auction, Mike Kintner, who's the GM who we had on the other week, he was texting buddies with Dr. Robbins. We'll find out what he thinks the next time we have him on about that change at the top for Arizona. All right, coming up next, the professor, Matt Moreno. Get your pencils and paper in session. Classes getting close here on Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here, and I'm at the Ice Shaker Warehouse, the proud sponsor of the Wildcat Country podcast. And I got something new and exciting to show you. We're talking about the 4D printed University of Arizona shaker bottles with the Legacy Championships on it. Check it out now at iceshaker.com.
It is the 20th time that we have been in class with the professor here in Wildcat Country, a record 20 times. Welcome Matt Moreno from Go Easy Cats and Rivals.com to Wildcat Country, presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. All right, Matt,
Shouldn't that
great
be
to
worth
have
at
you here.
least three college credits at this point here?
I think we're getting more than that. I'll tell you, for
At
all
least.
the explanations and hours that Matt has talked on this program in our 200 and what are we on, 203?
Yeah, we did no 203, yeah, because we did 201 and 202 last week, and now we're on 203. Yeah.
So every 10 episodes Matt's been on, but this is already his third time in 2024. So hey, can I say we're trending above pace? All right, Matt. Just your thoughts on as an Arizona guy, somebody that follows us here. How disappointing is it the crash landing, just crashing out of the tournament? I guess in the Sweet 16. Should we say, hey, Arizona had a great season, or is it an utter disappointment?
I wouldn't say utter disappointment. I think utter disappointment would have been not making the Sweet 16. To me, they had to get there. You had the type of team that had Final Four talent, potentially national championship game talent. I know obviously once you get past the second weekend, kind of anything goes, and it's really anybody's game, and could be tough to beat this year. But they had enough talent to reach the Final Four, in my opinion, and but they absolutely had to get to the Sweet 16. There was no excuse to not be able to. Reach the second weekend. You couldn't have what happened last year against Princeton. I know they tried to kind of avoid talking about it, but you couldn't have that. You just couldn't have that happen. And so I think it was positive that they're able to make it to the second weekend. Very much less positive that they weren't able to get to the Elite Eight and beyond that. But when you looked at kind of how things played out, it was very similar to, it's one of those things that we've seen it time and time again, watching Arizona over the last decade plus. It feels like at the worst time, a lot of the things that maybe were negatives about the team that they were able to escape throughout the regular season kind of all come to a head in one game. And you go, oh, that's everything. We've seen all this, just not this same way in one game. You kind of had that play out where I think everybody in attendance I was going to call it Staples Center, Crypto.com Arena, and everybody watching at home was saying, get to the basket. Why are you taking so many 3-pointers? Stop taking 3-pointers. Just get to the basket. You're getting foul calls like crazy. Just take it to the hoop. And they couldn't do it. And they didn't really have any answers. I talked to, several guys in the locker room after the game, and there was just no real answers of why they weren't doing it. They just weren't doing it. And, Jaden Bradley was kind of the only one who was willing to do it. And he ends up, being the leading scorer and really kind of being the one bright spot in that game. But it just felt like a lot of the things that we had seen at different points throughout the season, when they had those hiccups, when they had those games where you kind of were left with scratching your head. It all kind of came together in one game, and you got what you got. And I don't think Clemson was particularly playing very well. I think they left the door open, and so
Yeah.
I think that's where you feel less excited or less, fulfilled by what went on with the season if you're an Arizona fan, even if you look at the positives, because that was a very winnable game. Arizona probably should have won that game with, how they had been playing up to that point. But yeah, I think it's very unfulfilled. I think the ceiling was very high for this team and just didn't reach it. But they had to get to the Sweet 16. I mean, it would have been very interesting to see how things developed when you give your coach a new extension, when you have, a really top flight recruiting class coming in and you aren't able to, again, get to the second weekend in March. You needed to have that happen. So I think they did what they had to do in certain ways, but really, left a lot on the table.
We've all been talking about it, Matt. Fair or not, it's been a talker. Tommy Lloyd in the NCAA tournament, 3 years now as a 1 or a 2 seed, and 3 years of coming short of the Final Four and even the Elite Eight. Is it fair to criticize Tommy Lloyd on that level, or is it more just the crapshoot of this tournament and eventually his time will come?
I do think his time will come. I think he's the right coach for the job. I do think he has the recruiting chops, obviously. I think he has the coaching chops to eventually push through and break through the barrier. Um, but I do think the criticism is fair. I mean, he's had opportunities. He's had very good teams. He's had NBA players on his teams, and they just can't push through this barrier to, reach that final weekend. And so I think the criticism is fair. I think there's probably some things that need to change. I'm sure there's some things he's going to assess and figure out exactly how they go about it. Um, so I don't blame Arizona fans who want to, point that out and bring that up and be like, hey, is he the right guy for the job? And I can see those arguments. I think he is. I think they eventually do push through under Tommy Lloyd. Um, I think you have to look at, again, the type of teams that they're building. I think, again, there's a lot of guys that are trying to figure out, coaches that are trying to figure out how to maneuver all this with the coaching, with the transfer portal, and trying to build a new roster every season. And I think he is starting to really figure that out at Arizona, which is, a big part of it. Obviously, he's still pretty early on in his career at Arizona. And so you have to remember that. But I think he's starting to figure out kind of how to maneuver it all, what type of team he wants to build. You look at the recruiting class coming in, there's a lot of talent there. And so then it's kind of just about filling in the gaps. I think you have to come back to the point guard play, and you have to really, that's kind of moving forward where you have to really get things solidified, because you get into this time of the year and it is kind of cliche and it is something that comes up a lot, but it really does matter. There's a reason that people talk about it. The point guard play is paramount in March, and you have to have very, not even just strong, you kind of have to have elite point guard play. This time of year, and Arizona just hasn't had that. And so they need to figure out kind of that position. I think figure out what the approach is there. Kylan Boswell was not very committal about what he was going to do. And, he mentioned, that there's going to be some conversations when they go back and, when they got back and figure out where things go next. So is he going to be the future? Is there going to be somebody else who comes back, who doesn't come back? There's a lot of questions that need to be asked, but I think that's going to be one of the key spots to really look at as they move forward, to see if they can really eventually, really push through this tournament and get to the third weekend.
We've already seen some movement in the transfer portal for Arizona. A couple of guys have already announced that they're headed elsewhere. Your best guess, Kylan Boswell, who you already mentioned. Umar Ballo has a chance to come back next season. Just give us some maybe general odds on what on your thoughts on either guy and their likelihood to come back to Arizona.
It feels like Colin Boswell probably won't be coming back, but it's just too tough to say. I think you're in a time where there's less kind of, a few years ago it was kind of like, oh, we can't even talk about this. You don't want to talk about guys leaving because it's not fair to them. But in the age of NIL and everything that's going on in the transfer portal, I think it's more appropriate to have those conversations and to talk about those things publicly. And he wasn't necessarily shy about, hey, there's some things we need to figure out and discuss, talking after in the locker room after that game against Clemson. So it feels like, based on how things went, kind of how things have gone with players in the past, there's a lot of fans that are highly critical of him and his play and what he's done. And I think just feeling how it feels around kind of his situation, it feels like he's not going to be someone that returns. But I also wouldn't be shocked if he does, because knowing him, I have been tracking him for a while now, and he is very competitive, and I think he wants to be able to win, and I think he wants to play at a high level, and I think there's a reason he picked Arizona, and there's a reason he picked playing for Tommy Lloyd. And so I think if you look at all those things, it wouldn't be a huge shock if he ends up staying, but then it's a matter of figuring out, okay, what do you need to get better at? How do you improve? Because I think they do need to have him play better, more consistently, to get what they want out of that position. So he'll be an interesting one. With Umar Ballo, I think it's actually probably more under consideration that he comes back. I mean, I think if you talk to him, he felt, it's tough because it's right after the game, but it felt like there was something still out there for him. And that he could do more. obviously it's kind of an interesting time if you're trying to be a pro and play in the NBA. And if you're a big man, you have to be able to make 3-pointers. That's just how it is. And there's a certain look about a big man in the NBA right now that Umar Balla doesn't necessarily fit. And so would it hurt him to, come back and whether that's working on his 3-point game or just maximizing his career as a college player and then, going overseas or however he's going to go about it. But I think for him, I think it's probably a little more likely that he ends up. Again, I don't think there's anybody that you could point to and go, it's going to be a shock if they leave because that's just the way it is in college basketball and college athletics these days is, people are leaving left and right and they have their reasons. And, one day they're very committed and the next day they're not. And so, but I think with him, it feels like it's more likely than not that he ends up returning, which would be a huge boost for Arizona because they can, have somebody who's going to be able to, kind of welcome Emmanuel Steven in, and you'd hate to have to kind of turn over everything to a freshman like that and have him play truly, truly significant minutes right away. So I think it would be kind of give Arizona kind of a nice grace period to work him in, and because there is a lot of potential with him, and there's a lot of excitement I think about what he could potentially bring to the team in the future. But those big guys, it's difficult. Even Umar Balla didn't play a whole lot when he first hit the college scene, and he was a guy who was highly rated. So. I think it'd be good to have him back, and then we'll kind of see how everything else shakes out. I think Jane Bradley returning would be very, very important. I think KJ Lewis returning would be very, very important, especially with how both of those guys kind of finished up the season. I think they could be very key pieces to what Arizona wants to build moving forward when you kind of mix in some of these other incoming recruits and what they'll eventually do in the transfer portal. And again, the more guys are able to keep on, it's not a big surprise here that it's less that you have to do in the transfer portal, which I think Arizona would like to kind of have that sweet spot where they can have most of their roster built and have most of those guys either newcomers as freshmen who are highly talented, kind of mixed in with veterans who have been through the process, who understand the system and what they need to do and where they need to be and all those things on the floor, and then kind of drop in, a high level player, which I think Arizona again will be a hot destination for a lot of these transfer portal guys. I think they will continue to like what Arizona does. The system fits a lot of guys very well. And I think a lot of players will like playing for Tommy Lloyd, and I'm sure the players currently on the team, a lot of them will, vouch for that. And when they have visitors come in as transfers, will say, this is the place you want to be because, Tommy Lloyd is the kind of coach that is going to allow you to kind of do what you want, have a lot of freedom. Maybe that's gotten the better of the team at times where they maybe have a little bit too much freedom, but I think a lot of players will like a lot of things about Arizona, and they'll be another, one of those teams that's involved with a lot of top end guys.
All right, so name some of those top end guys. I'm not saying that Arizona's going to get them, but just a few that you would have your eye on if you were Tommy Lloyd.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if I could release all that. Yeah, I mean, I have to look at the portal. I really do have to. There's new guys coming in every single day. I'd have to really take a look at it and see. But I mean, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of options as we kind of move forward.
Jordan Pope is a guy out of Oregon State that seems, Arizona. He wanted to go to Arizona coming out of high school. Apparently, Sean Miller didn't recruit him, I believe, is the story there. And you know anything about that?
He got Arizona's attention this past season. That's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with Jordan Pope. I mean, there's so many names like that you're like, okay, there's a lot of guys. Look at Miles Rice. I mean, everybody's going to want anybody that's in the Pac-12 that's playing the Pac-12. You're going to want a lot of those guys. A lot of those guys are going to be wanted. And so, yeah, Jordan Pope is going to be an interesting one. Obviously, Arizona fans know what he did against Arizona, during this season, and he's going to have his options, and that's going to be the interesting thing is he's going to have his options, and someone like that, you have to look at their game and go, okay, he's going to understand like, oh, I'm going to be able to pick wherever I want to go now, which is going to be different. So yes, maybe he felt like, hey, I want to go to Arizona originally. I think they'll be very much in the conversation. But I think that with someone like that, you really have to figure out, okay, what is meaningful to him now. And again, there's this whole element of NIL and who's going to, you can want to go to Arizona. You could be like, that's where I want to play. I want to play for that coach. But if the money isn't right, the money isn't right. And so that's going to be a big part of a lot of these decisions. And so we'll kind of see how that plays. But Jordan Pope, obviously, yeah, I think Jordan Pope would be someone to keep an eye on for sure.
Is it fair to say, as of right now, before we see what the Wildcats do in the transfer portal, that next year will be a step back for Arizona as far as expectations?
I mean, I'm not there yet. I mean, I think you have to, there's so much time between now and when we know what the roster looks like to even say that at all. The recruiting class is very good. You have McDonald's All-American and Carter Bryant. You have Josan Sanan, who just, committed and is trying to reclassify. Sounds like that's probably very likely at this point that he reclassifies. I know a lot. We have him ranked in 2024 class. A lot of other people are expecting it to happen. A 5-star level prospect. Jamari Phillips, who's a high level scorer. Manuel Steven, like I mentioned, I think there's a lot of talent coming in with this team and on this roster. Yes, it's going to be young, but I really like what Arizona did with this recruiting class. It's their best in terms of high school prospects to me, and to a lot of other people. You just look at the rankings. It all depends on who stays and who goes and what they're able to do, which is, I know, a lot of what ifs, but I think if they're able to bring back, Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, Umar Ballo, I think if you bring back some of those key pieces and you can drop in just a couple key guys who bring some toughness and bring an edge and kind of bring a presence to the team, I think that there's no reason to believe that they can't, get just as far as they did this year and reach the Sweet 16 again. I'm a big fan of a lot of the recruits that they have coming in. Carter Bryant especially. I don't think we've seen the best of Carter Bryant at all, and he's a McDonald's All-American. And so I feel like there's still another level he can reach. And I think Arizona fans should be very, very excited about what he's going to bring to the table. And like I said, I know there's a lot of excitement internally about Emmanuel Steven and what he could potentially be, at the next level, maybe even right away. So I think that it's fair, I think, to think that they're going to have a little bit of a drop off, but I think that they have the talent coming in. And again, if they're able to keep, several guys, I think that there's no reason they can't reach the Sweet 16 again. And a lot to get there, a lot before we know exactly what every team is going to look like. But I think the one thing that you do have to start getting used to, and I think this is going to be the case for a lot of fan bases in the Big 12, there's going to be some losses. The regular season is going to look different. And so I think in a way that's going to prepare them a little bit better for the NCAA tournament. I don't think it's such a bad thing that you're going to have to see them lose some games in the regular season. It's the toughest and deepest conference in the country. It will be that way once again when you add some of these new teams. And so I think getting used to losing some conference games is going to be interesting for Arizona fans. But if you're able to push through that, and if you're Arizona and you build off of that and you learn things from those experiences, I think it's going to be really, really beneficial once you get into the NCAA tournament.
What are you trying to say? Arizona basketball fans don't take losing well?
So I've heard.
No, I agree with you though. I love that Arizona's going to play some tougher games later in the season as well as early in the season, as opposed to this past season. All right, let me pivot to football real quick. The dust has settled a little bit on this roster now under the new coaching regime. I know we still have another transfer portal window to go. Your overall thoughts on how this roster is beginning to shape up as we're into spring practice now, and how Coach Brennan and his staff have been able to hold it together as he has to this point.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement about what they're going to be able to do. I like what the running back position has done. I know there's still waiting to get some pieces there, but it sounds like everyone that was kind of waiting in the wings, Kevin Green Jr., some of these other guys that have been kind of waiting their turn, have kind of stepped up in the spring. I think that's exactly what you hope to see. And it kind of, you needed that from Arizona. You needed some guys to step up because of what you lost and what you're trying to replace. But, I think that they've done a good job of really kind of just building on what Jedd Fisch started. And I know a lot of Arizona fans don't want to hear that name mentioned or think that he did anything positive right now, but he did. He left a really good foundation. And obviously they were able to retain several of the key pieces from last year's team. And if you don't have that happen, you're in a much different spot. And so I think that there's a lot to be optimistic about. I think that in the early part of the transfer portal window that, Brent Brennan and his staff were able to, find some quality pieces to fill some gaps, within this roster. And again, I really like what they've done offensively. I think defensively is where kind of the question marks are going to be, but I think that's where you have to trust someone like Dwayne Akina and say he's been through this. He knows what to expect. He knows what he wants and what fits what he wants to run. And I'd expect them to be a little bit more active defensively as they get into the next transfer portal window, which is coming up here very quickly. I think that they'll probably go after, I think we talked about it last time, but probably another corner. If you could have, a top tier corner to this team, I think that it'll go a long way and it'll kind of solidify things in that secondary. I think another offensive lineman would be interesting to add. It would be, I think anytime you can have more protection for your quarterback and make Noah Fafita feel as comfortable as possible, it's going to be positive. And so I think that, that they're kind of set on weapons, but you never know. I mean, they could go out another receiver, right? That's the thing you really don't know about the portal window. And we looked at it last year and it's like, you see needs and you go, okay, that they're going to attack those. And I think they did a good job last year of doing that and this offseason of doing that. But then there's a random kind of receiver that they're like, oh, we wanted this guy and now you added him. And so there could be some other weapons that, get added offensively. I think they're okay at a lot of those spots. I really like, what they have at a lot of those spots. You look at like I mentioned, Kevin Green Jr., I think he's somebody who's ready to step up and kind of make an impact. And heard a lot of good things so far about, how things have gone with some other receivers kind of getting ready for spring ball and leading into spring ball. And so I think they're okay there. But, if you can find a proven guy, if you can go find a Jacob Cowling, who is going to, have experience and have the stats and everything and be ready to hit the ground running and make an impact in the fall, then I think you can't avoid looking at those types of players. So it'll be interesting to see what they do because I do think there could be maybe a couple surprises where you're going, oh, if you're an Arizona fan going, we really didn't realize that they were looking at that type of position, and you can see them kind of go after those types of players. So based on what I've heard and based on kind of what we're starting to see a little bit, I think it'll really ramp up here in this next week. But it could be crazy. I mean, not necessarily for Arizona, but just across the board where I think because of so much coaching movement, it shouldn't be a surprise, I guess, that with so much coaching movement in kind of in December, January, a lot of players are caught in the middle going like, oh, do we stay? Do we leave? What do we do? A lot of players decided, hey, we're just going to wait it out and see how spring ball goes.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are going to be getting close to the end of spring ball by the time that window opens. And I think there'll be a lot of decisions of like, hey, we gave it a shot and it's just not going to work. I'm not where I want to be on the depth chart. And I think you're going to see a lot of movement once again, a shorter window. So a lot could happen in a very short amount of time. And so I think that's where you're going to see a lot of, as they head into the second portal window, but it sounds like it's going to be pretty active across the board.
Yeah, I'm sure that the rosters as we're looking at them now aren't going to look they're going to look quite a bit different next month or two. But my last question for you, Matt, is even with that in mind, looking at the Arizona's first season in the Big 12, I know when Jedd Fisch was still at Arizona, you had big expectations for them. Do you think this team, with the roster as it stands now, and maybe if they add a couple of pieces in the transfer portal, could contend for a Big 12 championship in its first season?
I still want to see more, and I still think there's a couple pieces that probably need to be added before I would be willing to be like, yes, they're very much going to be in that conversation. But I don't think there's that big of a drop off from where we thought they were going to be, when Jedd Fisch was still the head coach to now. I think if you look at it and you look across the board in general, having a quarterback who's returning is crucial. And not a lot of teams can say that. And so I think being able to keep Noah Fifita, and yes, the sample size is smaller. I mean, he's obviously only played as, a little over half a season, whatever it was. But even having him, finish out the season and what he was able to do and have the success he was able to have, he'll come back that much more confident. And just having that where he doesn't have to, obviously it is a newer system with the new coaching staff, but where he has that camaraderie with his teammates, where he has that kind of connection with a lot of his teammates, I think that's so key. And there's going to be a lot of teams in the Big 12 who are not in that same position, who are looking for a new quarterback, trying to decide, who they're going to go with. And when you don't have that delay, they can go into, training camp knowing, hey, they know exactly who their quarterback is. And I think that's huge. You can kind of use those building blocks right now in the spring to, start building the offense, start kind of getting everything, down for everybody. And like I said, I don't think there's going to be a ton of movement offensively with the players and the portal and all that. And so I think if you're able to have that kind of leader already set, you already know, and everybody around him already knows that's going to be your guy, I think that eliminates a lot of headaches, and I think that puts him in a very good position going into the fall.
When it comes to recruiting, and my last question here, when it comes to recruiting, Brent Brennan versus Jedd Fisch, do you think it will be like I could see it being a steep drop off? Jedd was a fantastic recruiter. Say what you want about him, guy could seriously recruit. Do you think we're talking 3 years down the road that we're going to say, boy, Brent Brennan cannot measure up to Jedd Fisch, and this staff cannot measure up to what Jedd brought?
No, I think it's different. I'm a big fan of what they've done. Previously at San Jose State, I think there is a lot of players that they identified early. I've mentioned this before. If there is a staff that you can, I think, really trust their evaluation skills, it is the staff. When you look back at a lot of recruits across the West and in some key areas that Arizona is going to want to continue to be a part of, and that a lot of teams that are in what was the Pac-12 will continue to want to be a part of. San Jose State was in there with a lot of those prospects, and they did a really good job of jumping in early with a lot of recruits. I think they trust their evaluations. I think they know what they like, and so I think that's huge. And that's kind of a good mindset to have when you're at a place like Arizona, because you're not going to always be in the running with every 5-star, with every high 4-star guy. You're going to have to find some diamonds in the rough, and you're going to have to find a 3-star guy that you really like, that you think has a talent, then develop him. And so I think the thing that Arizona fans will probably have to take, kind of not allow themselves to do, is compare themselves to what Jedd Fisch is doing in Washington. It's a completely different aspect. Obviously, they're going to a different conference, but it's a different kind of ball game up there, and they have some different things and advantages that they're working with that you're not going to have at Arizona. So I think there's going to be a lot of fans. Jedd Fisch, they have already picked up a 4-star 2026 commitment just this week. And so I think it's difficult. It's going to be difficult for Arizona fans not to compare the two programs and say, oh, look at him. He's getting, because they're going to recruit at a high level. You're putting a very good recruiting staff at a very desirable place with a good NIL kind of situation. And they're gonna do some damage on the recruiting trail at Washington. And you're already starting to see that. And so I think Arizona fans can't allow themselves to necessarily look at that and go, oh, look at what he's doing. That's what we lost. Like that should be happening at Arizona. Different situation. I think he was doing a very good job with Arizona, but it's a different situation. But I think the one thing you have to really look at with Brendan and the staff is just their evaluations. And if they're able to convince a lot of those players, which quite honestly, in very many situations, what they were doing was getting those guys to commit very early on in the process. And then Arizona, USC, Washington, all these schools would eventually catch on and offer those guys. And they go, okay, never mind. Maybe I don't want to go to San Jose State. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing to watch is how much they're able to get those guys to commit and stay committed, because they're at a different spot now. They're going to have, that Power Four, whatever we're going to be calling it from now on, behind them. And so they're going to be able to say, hey, we play in a power conference. And I think having this staff at a school like Arizona or in a power conference is going to be interesting to see, because I think it will be an advantage. And I think if they're able to get in, and you're already seeing it, they're offering a lot of younger prospects. And I think they're going to be a very big proponent of recruiting in Northern California, which is really kind of booming right now. There's a lot of talent. There's always is a lot of talent. We know that, but there really is a kind of a really nice crop of talent in these current and upcoming classes. And because of their connections back to the Bay Area, San Jose State, I think Arizona's gonna be a big player in that part of the country. And I think that'll be to their advantage. So I think there is a lot to be excited about with the staff and where they're going recruiting wise. I don't think it's going to be as drastic of a drop off as maybe some fans think.
All right. Well, that's encouraging. All right. Bonus question for you, just because I can't resist, and you can answer or not answer if you choose. Set the over under, and you don't need to give your pick on it, for how many years Jedd Fisch will be at Washington. Now, the over under has to have a half a year. Like I would have said 3.5 years at Arizona, and he lasted 3. So, okay, fine. In the under here, what's the number you would set? Not saying your pick, but what's the number you'd put on it?
2.5 years.
That's exactly what I would have said. Shane, what would you say?
Same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, like we've always talked about it, the Florida job opens up. Let's get
the Florida. Let me tell you this: the Florida job is opening up this year in
Maybe.
2024-25. Like Florida at the opening day 2025 will have a new football coach. I would bet I wouldn't say bet my house on it because it's probably not a good bet. I would bet a substantial amount of money on that Billy Napier with that schedule is not winning anywhere close to 6 games, and I think he gets fired. Will Jedd be the guy? I guess we'll all find out. Nonetheless, pencils, pens down. Great job having the professor. Great to have the professor on, Matt Moreno. Always good to talk to you for the 20th time. Thanks for joining us here in Wildcat Country.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi folks, here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Thanks to Matt Moreno for joining us. Always great intel from him. But a sad week, Shane, in the Arizona sports world. Heath Bray passed away at a very young age. We had him on the show a few years ago, I think in 2021, and he was full of enthusiasm and unfiltered opinions. And you got to know him a little bit better than I did.
Yeah, a horrible situation. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. His son, Mason, who just got offered by Arizona. He's a great quarterback at Saguaro High School and is set to graduate very soon. So I just feel horrible for him and his family. I got to know Heath when I was soliciting interviews for my book, my first book that I wrote about the rivalry. And the way it worked was for Arizona, I was trying to reach out to alumni to talk to them about their memories of playing against ASU. And I worked with Frankie Acosta, who was the president of the Letter Winners Association, I think it was. And he said he would pass along my name and my contact info, and people would just get back to me if they could. And one of the very first alums to get back to me was Heath Bray, and the subject line in the email was just mustard and rust, of course, referring to ASU's colors. And so the email was very short. Hey, Shane, Frankie Acosta sent me your email. Anytime that I can trash the mustard and rust, I love it. If I can help, let me know. And so we set up a time to chat. It was one of my favorite interviews. I did 150 interviews, and he was one of my favorites. He talked very fondly about the games he won against ASU. I know he talked about, I don't think he played in this game because it was before he started playing, but he was on the roster, the 89 game in Tempe where ASU wore those horrible, very, very yellow uniforms. And he just had a whole like monologue about that. And it's like, as soon as they came out in those uniforms, the Arizona knew it was going to win. Yeah, very passionate about the rivalry. Also had a lot of respect for the other side as well. I know Juan Roque, who's on the ASU side of things and very passionate Sun Devil, had a very nice Facebook post about Heath and getting to know him over the years and just the mutual respect, the quote unquote hatred, but also the respect they have for each other. But yeah, when I saw that, it's just shocking. I mean, we had him on the show. I've talked to him multiple times. Follow him on Facebook. He's always posting through football season how proud he was of his son, and he is all of his sons. You know, he posted memories from years ago and how look how I'm so proud of them and how as they grow up. And I know I'm kind of screwing up my words here, but it's just kind of hard to talk about still. But my thoughts are with Heath's family, and I'm glad to see Mason get offered by Arizona. Whether he decides to come to Arizona or not is that's all his business. But it was very nice. If nothing else, it was a very nice gesture by Arizona to do that. And he had an outstanding year at Saguaro. And I know your friend Dan Minucci has worked with Mason at the quarterback position. So it's tough to put into words, and it was just shocking. And I really feel for his family.
Yeah, absolutely. Extremely sad. We had Heath on the show twice, in March of 2021 and in September of 2021. And he gave passion. He showed his passion both times. We asked him about the, mustard and rust, both. And so go back if you want to check those out. You can find those interviews. I
very candid comments about Kevin Sumlin back in the day as well.
Yeah, he was not one to hold back, and many condolences to his family. His stepson Jake is somebody that I know listens to this show, and as just our hearts go out, and condolences go out to the family of Heath Bray. Good man, very good man. Lived a heck of a life and
had a lot of success after football as well in professional world. So yeah, in the corporate world, he will be very, very greatly missed.
Gone too soon at 54. Yep. All right. Just awful. All right, we're gonna try to do our best. Transition, make a couple of Final Four picks. Listen, Shane, I'm bitter that Arizona's not in it. I'm not going to ask you to pick spreads. We're just going to, pick some winners. Start with, how about NC State? This is a team that should not have made the tournament. They got lucky in the ACC tournament, hit a buzzer-beating shot to go to overtime. They end
bank up shot, no less. Yeah.
Yeah, a bank shot to go to overtime. They end up beating Duke. They end up beating North Carolina. And then in the tournament, they go on a run, beat Marquette, beat Duke. And now they're in the Final Four playing Purdue. Who wins? NC State or Purdue?
And it's funny. I had no intention of watching any of the rest of this tournament. But then when I saw NC State was about to beat Duke, I tuned in and watched the end of that because that was enjoyable. But I think I saw a stat where like 5 other 11 seeds have made the Final Four and none of them have gotten to the championship game. I think it ends here. I think Purdue wins, as much as I would love to see NC State pull a Jimmy V 2.0. I don't think it's going to happen. I think had a great run, but I think it ends at Purdue's hands.
Somebody gave me crap that I was, negative about Purdue. And yeah, you're right. I was wrong about them. I thought Matt Painter would choke in the tournament again. And, good for him. He proved me wrong. And I think they're going to take care of business in this game. And I think they win this game by double digits. Great for NC State. They've been a fun story. Happy to see it. Jealous that they've made a run and Arizona hasn't done this in 20-something years. But Matt Painter, good job. I was wrong. I'll own it. There you go. For that one person that thought I was being a piece of garbage by picking against Purdue. There you go. I can be wrong. That it does happen. And in this case, I was. So good for Purdue. And I think they roll on to the championship game. The other game, Connecticut's won 10 straight tournament games by double digits. They play Alabama. I personally, Shane, don't think this game is going to be close. I think Connecticut rolls. I don't care about their plane issues, getting out back east to get out here. It doesn't matter. They're going to roll.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll beat Alabama. I think Alabama made it to the Final Four despite having a horrible defense, according to Ken Palm. I think a sub 100 defense, and I think that finally catches up to them. I think UConn, maybe they give UConn a game, maybe they hit some early threes, take an early lead, but UConn, I think they end up rolling. I think we get the UConn Purdue matchup that most that default matchup that most of us predicted. Not me, but most people predicted going into the
No, you
tournament.
had Alabama getting to the Final Four though, so I got to give you a lot of props with that.
If I had just been disciplined and just stuck with Purdue and UConn, I would have had 3 out of 4. But I had to get too cute with it. So
yeah, but good for you. You picked Alabama as a 4 seed to come out of Arizona's region. I thought you were crazy. Good for you. Way to go.
Yeah, I'll take it.
So Purdue against UConn. Do the Boilermakers stand any chance of upsetting UConn and ending that dream of a back-to-back national titles?
Got to make a semi-bold pick here. I'll say that Purdue will become the second of as many 1 seeds to lose to a 16 and win a national championship. I think they find a way back, and I think they pull off the upset against a UConn team that maybe just relaxes a little bit after 5 straight easy tournament wins.
Good pick, but the wrong pick, in my opinion. I think UConn continues their run of dominance to 12 straight games of double-digit victories in the tournament, and they win another national championship. Danny Hurley goes down as one of the great coaches in college basketball history, while his brother can't win a round of 64
By the
games.
way, DJ Horn, another former Sun Devil. Remember Remy Martin won.
Remy Martin the other year, yeah.
Now you got DJ Horn at NC State. I didn't even know he was on NC State until I started watching the game a couple days ago. I'm like, that name sounds familiar, and sure enough, so.
Cool. I got a random question. I don't know if anybody knows this answer out there. When is the last former Arizona Wildcat to make a Final Four team?
The last former Arizona Wildcat?
Because obviously nobody from Arizona has made it because they haven't made it since 2001. Now, Will Bynum.
I was going to say Will Bynum, but
is there anybody else? If you guys can think of it, let us know in the comments. I'm kind of curious. I just kind of threw that one out offhand. Who else? What former Arizona player has played in the Final Four more recently than Will Bynum? Are there any? So if you can think of one, let us know.
Let me ask you this, Eric. Are you interested at all? And it's okay if the answer is no. Are you interested at all in the women's Final Four this year? Because I kind of, I would. The only other time I was disinterested in the women's Final Four is when Arizona was in it a few years ago.
Yeah.
But the Caitlin Clark saga actually kind of intrigues me because not only is she ridiculously good, but she's kind of controversial too, and she complains a lot and talks a lot of trash. I think it'd be she's going up against UConn, Gina Ariema's, and
who do you pick in that game?
Iowa wins. UConn was kind of not lucky to get there, but I don't think they're that good. But I would tune in. I would tune in to see Iowa against undefeated South Carolina because you'd have the best player against the best team. It's a fun storyline. I actually legitimately think it's interesting. And so I'm going to pick, and I'll probably pick South Carolina to win it.
Sure.
But I hope we get that matchup because I think it'd be a lot of fun and it would be good for women's basketball. Look, I used to cover women's basketball at U of A. I enjoyed it. They had a good team, and I don't watch it nearly as much as I do on the men's side, but I follow our women's Wildcats, obviously. But I am legitimately interested in the women's Final Four this year. And other than Arizona making it a few years ago, I haven't been able to say that very often.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Shane. The quality of basketball on the women's side has been really, really good. I mean, those 2 games on Monday night, you had LSU and Iowa, and then USC and UConn. And those were 2 really, really well-played games, arguably better than most men's games that I've seen in this tournament.
More competitive,
so I think this Final Four, there's a reason the ticket prices are through the roof for the women's. I mean, Caitlin Clark is a must-watch. She is phenomenal. And UConn, Paige Becker's excellent. And South Carolina, as you mentioned, for Dawn Staley's team's undefeated. They're just a well-rounded team that's undefeated. So I think it's going to be a fascinating Final Four. I would agree with you and go South Carolina over Iowa. But man, if Caitlin Clark can find a way to upset South Carolina and ruin a perfect season and end her college career that way, that would be unbelievable.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is, I'm become a sports card collector again during the pandemic, and I've gotten into it and stayed into it the last few years. And there aren't a lot of women whose sports cards are really valuable. Caitlin Clark's cards right now are through the freaking roof. And if she wins a national championship, some of her cards are going to sell for thousands of dollars, like some of the autograph cards. Yeah. It's amazing what's going on right now.
It is crazy, and good for her. She has changed the way, in my opinion, women's basketball. Like Ari McDonald was phenomenal. Caitlin Clark's another level.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look at it that way.
Well, she'll hit 9 3-pointers and she'll still have double-digit assists. I mean, I think the closest comparison is Steph Curry on the men's side.
Yeah, you're right. In his prime.
Yeah,
Steph Curry in his prime. Yeah, so really interesting weekend of college basketball, but yeah, I'm depressed. We don't have Arizona playing, and this is a weekend that I had
saving
thought
some
of.
money, Eric. Look at it that way.
Look on the bright side, I guess. Yeah. Thanks to Matt Moreno for joining us. As always, for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.